Your wife is cheating on you. Waitress gives Billionaire a note that leaves him frozen. What would you do if a complete stranger handed you a note exposing your perfect life as a lie? For tech billionaire James Harrington, a routine business lunch became the moment his world shattered into a million pieces. But what happened next would change everything. James stared at the small folded paper the waitress had slipped under his coffee cup. His hands trembled as he read the 5 words that would haunt him forever: "Your wife is cheating on you." The restaurant around him continued buzzing with conversation, but for James, time stood still. Little did he know, this moment would lead him to discover not just betrayal, but a conspiracy that threatened everything he'd built. The waitress, Mia, watched from across the restaurant, her heart pounding. She never intended to get involved in a billionaire's marriage, but after what she'd witnessed last week in this very restaurant, she couldn't stay silent. When James finally looked up, their eyes met, and something passed between them, a connection neither could explain. What Mia didn't realize was that her simple act of honesty would put both their lives in danger. "I need to know everything," James said when he cornered Mia after her shift ended. The parking lot was dark, and his voice was low, controlled despite the storm raging inside him. Mia hugged her jacket tighter. "Your wife meets a man here every Thursday. They're intimate. But there's more to it than just an affair." "What do you mean?" "I overheard them talking about your company. About taking something from you." Mia hesitated. "I think they're planning to steal more than just your dignity, Mr. Harrington." James felt like he'd been punched. 15 years of marriage to Elise, and now this? His wife wasn't just sleeping with another man, she was conspiring against him. The betrayal cut deeper than he could have imagined. "Why are you telling me this? You don't even know me." Mia's eyes softened. "My father lost everything because someone he trusted betrayed him. I couldn't watch it happen to someone else, even a stranger." That night, instead of confronting Elise, James decided to investigate. What he discovered sent ice through his veins. His wife's lover was Victor Chambers, his company's chief competitor, and they weren't just planning an affair. They were orchestrating a hostile takeover that would leave James ruined. Over the next weeks, James found himself turning to Mia repeatedly, first for information, then for comfort. She became his confidant, the only person he could trust in a world suddenly filled with deception. "I never thought I'd be the guy whose wife cheats on him," James confessed one evening as they sat in his car outside her apartment. "I gave her everything." "Sometimes people want what they haven't earned," Mia replied softly. "It doesn't reflect on you." Their eyes met in the dim light, and for a moment, James forgot about his collapsing marriage, the business betrayal, all of it. There was something about Mia's straightforward honesty that healed parts of him he hadn't realized were broken. The night before he was set to confront Elise and Victor with evidence of their scheme, James found himself at Mia's door. "I shouldn't be here," he said. "Probably not," she agreed, but stepped aside to let him in anyway. They talked until dawn, not about his wife or the betrayal, but about dreams, regrets, the people they'd hoped to become. In those hours, something bloomed between them that neither had expected. "Whatever happens tomorrow," James said as the first light of morning filtered through her curtains, "you changed my life by slipping me that note." Mia touched his face gently. "Sometimes the hardest truths lead us where we need to go." The confrontation with Elise and Victor went exactly as James had planned, and nothing like he'd expected. Armed with evidence of their corporate espionage, he watched his wife's face transform from defiance to fear as she realized she'd been discovered. "You think you've won?" Elise hissed. "You have no idea what you're up against." She was right. Within days, James found himself fighting not just for his company but for his reputation as Victor and Elise launched a smear campaign painting him as unstable and dangerous. The empire he'd built from nothing was crumbling around him. In his darkest moment, when investors were fleeing and the board was considering removing him, it was Mia who stood by him. Not because he was a billionaire, those days seemed numbered anyway, but because she'd seen something in him worth fighting for. "They can take your money, your company, even your reputation," she told him. "But they can't take who you are unless you let them." With Mia's encouragement, James fought back. Not with the cutthroat tactics his wife and Victor expected, but with transparency and integrity. He went public with everything, the affair, the corporate espionage, all of it. The risk was enormous, but so was the reward. The public rallied behind him. Former employees came forward with evidence supporting his claims. The tide turned so dramatically that Victor's own board forced him to resign, and Elise found herself isolated and exposed. What James hadn't anticipated was Elise's desperation. 3 days after Victor's resignation, James received a call from his security team. Someone had broken into Mia's apartment. By the time he arrived, police cars surrounded the building, their lights painting the night in flashes of red and blue. "She's okay," the officer told him before he could ask. Shaken up, but not hurt. James found Mia sitting on the steps of her building, a blanket around her shoulders. When she saw him, something in her expression broke open. "She was here, James. Your wife was in my apartment." The police found evidence that Elise had been stalking Mia for weeks, photos, schedules, personal information. In her desperation to regain control, she'd become dangerous. That night, James insisted Mia stay at his guest house, where security could protect her. "I never meant for any of this to happen," Mia whispered as they drove through the city. "I just wanted to do the right thing." James reached across the console and took her hand. "You did. And now it's my turn." The restraining order against Elise was just the beginning. As the investigation deepened, authorities uncovered financial crimes that went beyond corporate espionage. Elise had been embezzling from James's charitable foundation for years, funneling money to offshore accounts she shared with Victor. "I trusted her with everything," James told his lawyer, the weight of the betrayal still fresh. "Including the foundation my mother started before she died." The case made headlines nationwide. Billionaire's wife arrested in fraud scheme. The media circus was brutal, but this time, James didn't hide from it. With Mia by his side, he faced the cameras and told his story, not as a victim, but as someone determined to rebuild with integrity. 6 months later, James sat across from Mia in the same restaurant where she'd first slipped him that note. His company had not only survived but was thriving under a new ethical leadership model he'd implemented. "I never thanked you properly," he said, reaching for her hand across the table. "For what? Blowing up your life?" Mia smiled. "For saving it," James replied. "I was living a lie and didn't even know it." As they left the restaurant, James paused on the sidewalk. "I used to think success was about what you own. Now I know it's about who you become through the hardest moments." Mia squeezed his hand. "And who are you becoming, James Harrington?" He looked at her, this waitress who had changed everything with one brave act. "Someone worthy of the truth. And hopefully, worthy of you." 1 year to the day after that fateful note, James and Mia stood together at the opening of the Harrington Truth Project, a nonprofit dedicated to corporate transparency and ethics. The foundation, rebuilt from the ashes of scandal, now funded whistleblower protections and supported victims of corporate fraud. "Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is tell the truth, even when no one's asking for it," James told the crowd gathered for the opening. His eyes found Mia's in the audience. "And sometimes the wisest thing you can do is listen when the truth finds you." That evening, as they walked along the waterfront near James's home, no longer a mansion but a comfortable house with a view of the bay, he stopped and turned to Mia. "You know, I never asked why you were working as a waitress when you have a degree in business ethics." Mia laughed. "I was researching a book about corporate culture. Turns out I got more material than I bargained for." James shook his head in wonder. "So you weren't just a waitress saving a billionaire. You were already fighting for the same causes." "We were on the same path before we even met," Mia said softly. Some might call that fate. Under a sky full of stars, James pulled a small box from his pocket. I don't believe in fate, he said. I believe in choices. And every day, I choose you. Sometimes life's greatest gifts come disguised as its cruelest blows. For James and Mia, a note meant to expose betrayal became the first line in a different story altogether, one about finding authentic love after devastating loss, and building something real from the ashes of what was false. If you were moved by James and Mia's journey, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that touch the heart. We'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your country in the comments below.